always with a great big smile. You won't leave lonely, you won't just start everything. I just can't wait to be here.
Good morning, and welcome to Storytime. Thank you so much for joining in. You know when the dance is back, it is a Friday. Thank you so much for joining us wherever you are. Please, as always, let us know where you're joining in from and who is joining in with you. And as you know, today we do have amazing guests with us. We do have Jerome Pumphrey and Monica Wesolowska. And I have to get that name right. Finally, I think I did. I hope I did, Monica. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. And yes, excitement in the house. I hope that you're ready. Please get whatever you need. Get that hot chocolate, get that cool drink, get everything that you need, that soft pillow, that stuffed animal. Bring it to you so this story time can be even better for you. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please let us know where you're joining in from and who is joining in with you. And of course, if you're joining in alone, you're still welcome. And we hope to have many, many more story times together. Thank you so much for being here with us. And of course, this week we have been celebrating and honoring, members of our community. And yes, this is the message that we are honoring this week. And as you know, there's so many things that are happening. And we have to try and put our voices out there. Use your talents, use your voices, use whatever resources that you have to make sure that justice prevails, to make sure that our communities are welcoming to everybody. So thank you so much for all the efforts that you put in. And remember too that your voice matters, your voice counts, no matter how small that may feel. And we shouldn't let decisions like the Supreme Court decision yesterday put us down. There's so much joy to be had. And we do the work, we continue to do the work, and we continue to hold those leaders accountable. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime today. Absolutely appreciate you. Our amazing guests will be here with us very shortly. Jerome Pumphrey, Monica Wesolowska, and of course, their beautiful book, Elbert in the Air, coming up very shortly. And please remember to follow them on their socials, and of course, go to their websites as well and find out a lot more about them, and of course, what's coming up with them. And of course, if they're newsletters, sign up so you can get all the juicy latest details. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime today. Absolutely loving it being here with you. Happy Friday. I hope it is indeed a happy one for you and yours. Thank you so much for joining in. Before we bring on our guests, let us see today who is with us this morning, ready to enjoy this beautiful book and of course this wonderful heartwarming story. Who is with us this morning? Thank you so much for being here on Storytime. Good morning to you. How are you doing? Sarah and Nathan out in Illinois, hoping for rain on the last day of June. And I hope that your sky, your air quality today is better. You did say it was getting better yesterday, so I hope that that continues to improve. Thank you so much for being here. And of course, good morning to you, Amanda West, as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy last day of June. Perfect end, right? Good morning to you one more time. How are you doing today, Ari? And of course, Megan out in Kentucky. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Love the time that we spend together, and I'm always appreciative of the time that we carve out to be here in our Storytime community, learn together, and of course continue to learn and grow ourselves. Thank you so much for being here with us on Storytime. I am with you, excited for this special day, excited for the guests that we do have today. Thank you so much for joining us. Good morning to you all in New York today. We are visiting his nanny in New York. Well, enjoy your time out there. I know the smoke has been out, but I hope that you've been able to get outside. And of course, it's always important to visit family and have those beautiful moments together. Thank you so much for joining in. Henry, good to see you live here with us. And of course, Marietta, sending you love and hugs from all the way out here in Oakland. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. Oh, I hope that our internet picks up. I hope so. There's pixelating. Oh, it's fixed. Yes. Small victories. I will take it. Thank you so much for updating me there, Megan, and of course, Ari. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. But for now, we do have special guests that are coming to Storytime. Please join me in welcoming to Storytime Monica Wesolowska, the author of Elbert in the Air. How are you doing today, Monica?
I'm very well. It's great to be here.
Yeah, good to have you here. Early bird.
Early bird. Yes, I know. I was complaining before the show, but I'm not complaining now. You might have noticed.
And please join me as well in welcoming Jerome Pumphrey to Scope.
Hello. So happy to be here.
To be here with you today.
I'm sorry, that was breaking up a little bit.
Oh, sorry. How's Florida today?
Oh, good. Yeah, so Florida's pretty good. It's hot, but it's pretty good beach weather.
Are you going to get out? Are you close to the beach? Are you going to get out a little bit?
Yeah, we sure are. We're about 20 minutes away from the beach, and we'll probably take a little trip there in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no, enjoy it. Enjoy it for sure. And how has been you have not been affected by the smoke that was coming down from Canada, were you?
No, that's not gotten to us.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, because I know it was east and I think part of the Midwest as well from what I saw on the news. So yeah, no, enjoy it. But welcome you two. So we have Elbert. Please tell us, how has it been for you? Let's start with you, Jerome. How has it been for you seeing Elbert out in the world? It's
been pretty incredible. This is the first story that I've illustrated that I didn't also write. And I did it because the story was so meaningful to me. It really resonated with me just from reading the words.
Yeah.
So I got to create a visual story for Monica's words, and it's been really awesome to see that out in the world.
Yeah. And for you, Monica, how has it been?
Oh, it's amazing. I came up with this idea. I followed it. But I didn't know what it would look like.
Yeah.
And
what is involved in that following? Because you followed it and followed it and followed it. What is that like? Do we have time?
Right, we do. So actually, I brought a little page here to prove that I handwrite. This is a little notebook. This is not even full-size paper. This is a little notebook I carry for, inspirational emergencies.
Yeah.
And I had an inspirational emergency. I was camping with my family. And I had this idea of a boy in the air. Well, actually, originally I thought he would be on a tightrope.
Yeah.
And that was really complicated. But yeah, following it, just that first draft literally meant that I had an idea. I had a boy. I named him Elbert at the time. And it took about 5 days. Every day when the kids were taking naps, they weren't that young, but I got them to go off and do something. I would sit in my chair and just see where this boy went. Then, so that was following the initial idea.
Yeah.
Several years later, I was still following it, but.
Oh, wow. And how many years till the time it was accepted or,
Gosh, let's see. Okay. The date on that little piece of paper says the summer of 2017, and I sold it in the spring of 2019. So 2 years, which for me is pretty fast.
Yeah, that seems really quick too. I was just thinking that. But yeah, so for you, Jerome, what comes first when you receive a manuscript like this? Is it images start to float around in your head, or or do you ever get to read a manuscript, just read the words, or do things start forming immediately?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think I'm still learning what it's like. This was the first one, and I've since done 2 other books.
Yeah.
And what I think it is I'm a visual thinker. So I when I read the stories, I do get images flooding my mind. I think later on in this, I've got a sketch that I'm going to share. It's in my little presentation I put together.
Yeah.
What I drew after I read it the first time. Obviously, I wasn't just reading this random manuscript. I was reading it because I was told, there's an opportunity to possibly illustrate it. So I wanted to see what what might this look like? What would Elbert look like? What's coming to mind? So
Yeah.
at first, I think 30 minutes, I sketched out a doodle, and we'll see if it looks pretty close to what Elbert.
You mentioned that. It just reminded me. I recently saw Elemental, the movie, and I saw George McClements on his Instagram posted an image of what he drew and what that looked like with the movie characters, and it's just like it's amazing to see how the original was to compare to what the end product was, and so just wondering for that too as well. I can't wait to see that juxtaposition of the end product and your initial work. But I'm excited to have you both here. Thank you so much for joining in, and to everybody that's joining us live, of course. Just a reminder that we are joined today by Jerome Pumphrey and Monica Wesolowska. And of course, they'll be sharing about their book, Elbert in the Air. And of course, just other work that they've been doing as well. And please remember to find them on the socials, find them, follow them on their socials. Of course, that's Monica's information. So please go on Twitter at m_Wesolowska, and then Instagram is Monica Wesolowska, and then of course monicawesolowska.com. And the same too for Jerome. Please do follow at the PumphreyBrothers.com. WJ Pumphrey for Instagram and Twitter. Thank you so much for being here with us, and absolutely excited to be sharing these stories with you here. And just a few comments as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Soraya, good morning to you right here in Oakland. Thank you for joining us. Sharon Lungo, good morning to you as well. I hope that you're well. I hope that you get to enjoy this lovely day out here in Oakland. I think we're starting to warm up a little bit into the weekend. It'll get colder as we get to 4th of July. So hopefully you can enjoy the time in between for sure outside, hopefully. And we hope that New York's, air continues to clear, and we hope that you enjoy the visit still, Henry, and of course Marietta out there. And in Kentucky, the update is 67. Air quality is about 67. Yes, we hope that it continues to improve. Thank you so much for joining in Storytime. At this point, we're going to get started with the fun part. I'm sure what everybody is here for. We're going to get started with reading of the book, and Monica will do that for us. I will go off screen, and then Jerome and I will go off screen, and then afterwards we'll join Monica back for this beautiful, beautiful story. So here we go. Oh, yours, Monica.
All right, wonderful. Let's see. So, well, I think you're going to make the background white so you can see the book a little better. But I first,
changing that. There we go.
Okay, great. So actually, this is the entire cover. So just imagine you'd taken the cover off of the book and spread it out. You could see the cover, the front of what you would see on the book, and then the little fly leaf explaining the book. And then on the back, you can see Elbert somersaulting out the window. So that's kind of like a sneak peek into what's going to happen in the book. So I am going to get started. I'm very excited. Elbert in the Air, written by me and illustrated by Jerome. Shortly after he was born, Elbert floated into the air. Soon his mother had to stretch to reach him. When people heard she stood on tiptoes just to feed him, they came from all around to give advice. "Net him like a butterfly," suggested one neighbor. "Reel him in like a kite," urged another. "Deflate him," insisted a stranger, "like a balloon." Yeah, that's a pretty mean thing to say. But Elbert was not a butterfly, nor a kite, nor a balloon. Elbert was Elbert, and when he cooed in the air, his mother merely said, "If Elbert was born to float, I will let him." As Elbert grew, he floated higher. Soon his mother had to climb the furniture to reach him. All day long, she tossed him toys which Elbert used to build a floating world above her head. "Look, Ma," he exclaimed. "Fantastic, Elbert," she replied. And for a while, it was. But Elbert grew and grew. When he outgrew his toy world, he somersaulted out the window to spend his days playing by himself above the yard. But one day he just hovered. Even on my birthday, he sighed. No one else is up here. Don't worry, his mother said, climbing a ladder with his cake. I'm here. Now make a wish. So Elbert did, and while he waited for his wish to come true, he shared his cake with some squirrels. Aren't they cute?
They are.
The next day, Elbert spotted a group of children starting school. Look, Ma, he called. I'm ready to join them. But when Elbert entered through the classroom window, his teacher called for help. Assign him bigger books, recommended the librarian. Issue him heavier shoes, prescribed the nurse. Glue him, dictated the secretary, to his chair. No matter what he tried, Elbert didn't fit in. His tears fell like rain. But when they tried to send him home, Elbert's mother sternly shook her head and said if Elbert was born to float, you should let him. Elbert soon learned to fold his schoolwork into fancy paper airplanes to land on his teacher's desk. At recess, he caught the highest balls and tagged his classmates with his shadow. Fantastic, Elbert, his mother said. And for a while, it was. But Elbert grew and grew. And as he grew, his distance from his classmates widened until he couldn't join their games no matter how he tried. To keep him company one night, his mother climbed a fire escape. Just be yourself, she soothed him, and you'll find friends. And she handed him a bowl of popcorn big enough to share. Look, Ma, he cheered, spotting a shooting star. Fantastic, Elbert, she replied. Make a wish. So Elbert did. And at this point, kids usually wonder, what is he wishing? What does he keep wishing? The next day, Elbert carried his wish all over town until people complained he was causing a commotion. Anchor him like a boat, preached a bus driver. Hook him like a fish, growled a dog walker. Forbid all floating, demanded the mayor. And arrest him. Oh my goodness. Fortunately, Elbert was Elbert. No hook, no anchor, no law could bring him down. And when his mother scrambled up a crane to defend him, he bravely reassured her, Don't worry, Ma, I'll just float higher. But as he rose and everyone shrank, Elbert's heart grew heavy. Just then, something nudged him. Dearest Elbert, be yourself, but take this picnic with you. And with that, Thanks, Ma, Elbert cried, blowing down a kiss. And with that, he floated higher and higher, high enough to find the world he'd always wished for. Dearest Ma, climb this rope. And it was fantastic. And there he is. And if you look, not just his mom is on that blanket at the end, but over there on the left, there's two kids who've been his friend ever since school. And they're coming up on a hot air balloon. So, and this world he'd wished for is all around him. just like in the blocks at the beginning. So that's the end.
Oh, so good. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
No, that was amazing. Thank you so much to talk about. I just feel like we want to dive into that conversation. But I'll just ask one question before we jump into Jerome's piece. So you mentioned, probably this is a big question, but you mentioned in the book, it says, if Elbert was born to float, I will let him float. And then just thinking that parenting does not come with a manual. You're both parents, so you tell me that, but like parenting does not come with a manual. So how has it been navigating being a parent from, like just from the time maybe your first one came? So how has it been navigating that? And what are some of those joys that you could share with us? Maybe let's start with Jerome.
Oh, sure. Yeah, well, for me, and I just want to say this bit, I feel like I took some inspiration from my own mother in the mother in Elbert. I saw that supportive nature that Monica told in the story. I saw that in real life, I believe.
Oh,
yeah. So, and so with my own kids, I'm like hoping that I can do as good a job as my parents did, and uplift them and let them do what they're meant to do. One way I feel like I've seen it is with creativity. My kids are very creative. I try to make it safe for them to make art in the house. We're not too precious about the walls. And just encouraging that. That's one way that I've seen. And my kids are pretty young. My youngest is 18 months.
Oh wow, yeah.
And the oldest is 8. I'm still learning.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Just wondering too, what came first? Was it letting them to explore the wars, or was it the exploring of the wars? I mean, like, you know what? We'll let you do it.
Probably the latter. I actually had to curb myself. I was realizing that my parents did that. They were so encouraging for the creativity, whether it was making sure we had supplies to explore stuff. And the house was never clean because of the wild imaginations. And I found myself trying to control a little bit too much. And I was like, you know what? We should probably encourage this and let them do it and figure out a way to do it where I'm not killing the artist instinct in them.
Yeah, no, I love it. Thank you for sharing that. How about you, Monica? Teenage boys.
Oh, well, yeah. So that's a whole other kind of parenting. Yeah. Yeah. But it's so interesting that Jerome started by talking about his own mother, because I'll say, in fact, that part of the reason I chose Jerome as an illustrator is that I could see in his beautiful books, The Old Boat and the Old Truck, that his veneration for a parent or a grandparent. And I thought, oh, he's the right illustrator for a book about, that's really, it's really two characters in this book, a mother and a son. And, parents aren't often protagonists in picture books. So I also was parented by parents who were really supportive of their kids being whatever they were going to be. And I grew up in Berkeley in the 70s. So there was a lot of that going on. But yeah, I just, in terms of parenting my own kids, all of my kids have required really, really different things. From the get-go, just really even how much they liked to be held as babies. I mean, one really didn't like to be held very long at all, and the other wanted to be held all the time. So I had to go with that for them, two very different ways of parenting. And that was really the inspiration behind the book, was not just my own experience, but watching all of the parents around me making very, very different choices, and sometimes feeling judged for it, because people would look at their parenting and think, you're not parenting right, without realizing that the children were requiring a certain kind of parenting that maybe didn't look like the manual. So, I mean, that's not to say we're all perfect parents at all, but I think that, yeah, parents really do need to learn a tremendous amount from their own kids.
Yeah, and it's job on training. But
Yeah, well, it's always changing. You know, they grow and grow and grow and grow.
right. No, that's amazing. And you know, like I know that topic could just be on its own, just a whole complete conversation. But just thinking about the process, you mentioned Monica, that you know you write down, you jot down stuff. I have my own writing pad where I always just put so many things, and so you jot down, you write, you know, you start your manuscripts and stuff. So talk us through just a little bit about that process, and then we'll come to Jerome for that as well.
Yeah, so I have a lot of ideas and I try to write them all down because ideas, inspiration, I think are a bit like dreams, where you think when you first wake up that you're totally going to remember that dream because it was so amazing. And within seconds, it's like disappeared. It doesn't really exist anymore except in the dream logic. So I try to write down all my ideas, and almost all of them start to wither before I've even finished writing them down. I lose interest. Like I haven't quite grabbed the heart of it. But every now and then when I do that, I realize I'm onto something. So that happened with this book, with Elbert. I just kept being interested in what would happen. And so it's a process of seeing where it's going to go. And I don't think at first I didn't really know what it was about. It was very complicated, and he was up on his tightrope, and he had two parents and a younger sibling, and it was kind of a sibling rivalry story, and there was a castle, and it got more and more complicated. And I showed it to my readers, and they kept saying, well, what's it about? What's it about? And it took a while for me to realize that it was really about Elbert being different from everyone around him, and how his mother would deal with that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Like, and just seeing that journey. Of course, the product that we get is not it. There's so much that has happened in there, and I feel like that's why it's so important to have creators come on like this and share with us those insights, because I think it's so important to it gives this book an extra dimension, I feel like. But yeah, Jerome, how about you? How's your process like?
Yeah, well, so as illustrator, that I've experienced a few things with this project. I think it's a fortunate thing. I was given it without any page breaks, just the full manuscript. And the first task is to break that down into a picture book. So I would control the pacing. I would decide where there's going to be an illustration or not. And then we have a full story. So I did that at the beginning, and I think it was a much longer book. I think there was like maybe 5 to 10 pages more than we have now, and we had to cut it down to get it to the right spot. But that's kind of my process was, rather than establishing the story, I really take on, as illustrator, the role of really understanding the story. I really need to understand all the themes that are being explored in there. And there can be a lot. And so after doing that, then I take the approach of figuring out what do these characters look like? What does this world look like? And that gets into color palette. And I choose colors to create a certain emotional tone that's appropriate for the story. And all of that informs the work in the end.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I know too that you prepared a presentation for us. Yeah. So would you like to, we can jump into that right now.
That is
and then Monica and I will be back.
Okay, great. So here we are.
Perfect.
Okay, great. So yeah, so these are just some slides, pretty much covering what I've spoken to. So Okay, right here, I mentioned the sketch earlier. So you'll see the very first sketches, I think, are on this darker brown piece of paper. They were just, what does a baby look like floating? And you'll see that, he wasn't totally designed yet. I didn't really have his personality or his face there, but I was trying to capture the spirit of him. And then this one on the white paper is a little bit more refined, and I think that was closer to me actually getting to work on it.
Wow.
Okay, so then the other thing that I knew was a challenge at the beginning was showing the character grow from baby all the way to, young adult.
Yeah.
So that I spent some time on developing that look. And there were more sketches in between here. These were the ones that look the closest to how it is in the book.
Yeah, although I'll point out the beautiful sketch of Elbert on the bicycle. That was such a hard moment for me and Jerome. I don't know how hard it was for you, Jerome. It was really hard for me. I had a whole scene of Elbert learning to ride a bicycle in the air, and ultimately we cut it because there was just cluttering the book, making it too long. So it's cute to see him on his bicycle.
Yeah. It's such a fun thing to draw. It reminded me of E.T. and lots of fun with flying on a bike. Okay, here's the next one. So on this book, the artwork is digital. So that is, I created it primarily in Photoshop, but it did start on paper. So I'll draw my sketches just because I'm very comfortable with the pencil and paper, and then I scan that into the computer, and then I alter it digitally. And this is what the characters look like as I developed it further. Okay, and so this is so the dummy book, the book that we put together that has everything worked out is just black and white line art with the text.
I like that.
Where it should go. Yeah,
I like that a lot.
And then I've got an example of that one finished. So there's the color there. And one thing I'll add is you can still see my face as I'm presenting, right? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. So this is tea stained paper. So that's craft paper that I've stained with tea, and I did that to create these textures that I felt were needed in the artwork. It still gives it the feeling of being tangible, and there's something I really like about that.
Can you explain that more? Because I know it's in the notes at the back of the book, but I've never really understood it.
Sure. So I've stained paper with tea, and what that does is that brings out the fibers in the paper. It makes it very visible. And then just as a part of creating the digital art, I'll scan in the paper, and I've done several sheets of it. I'll scan that in, and then I use that as my backdrop. I'll remove the color, make it so that it's white, but you still have the texture. And then that's just the backdrop that my digital paintings appear on.
So you're saying the actual white behind the colored bits are tea stained paper?
That's right.
Wow.
It looks like, it sort of looks like you've colored on paper. It looks like something was colored on paper. The paper is tea stained paper, and it did exist, but I added it there digitally.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, and so here's another spread that I really enjoyed. And so, yeah, one thing was my sketches to final were it was very, a lot didn't change. We got it to the point where everyone had signed off, and I just added color, and it pretty much stayed the same.
I have a question about that one too. The bookshelf reminds me of City Hall later on. Did you do that on purpose?
I wish I was that clever.
Well, subconsciously you're that clever, and that's a hugely important part of intelligence.
Yeah,
I mean, I love it because it's like the mom is climbing a bookshelf. What could be cooler? It's like books that later are City Hall, like she's I don't know, getting higher and higher in terms of synthesizing this information about how to advocate for her kid.
Yeah, that's where I think it might come in, is definitely very intentional, which you kind of built into the structure of the story, but there's rhythm and there's these beats that echo each other throughout the story. And so this does visually echo the later spread where she's literally climbing the crane to support her son.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those happen very organically. And the fact that I do try to have visual echoes with the shapes and the style of artwork. And I think that's a happy, what do they call it? A happy mistake or, a happy coincidence here. But yeah, that's the kind of magic that I think happens with collaborating like this. And I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, this one is an example, I think, of something that changed. So we had a panel here that had the two friends on bikes. That doesn't appear in the final book. In the final book, we've got it like that.
Oh.
So that was an editorial decision. But it, again, just to the process of making books, that's what can happen. And so I believe that's all I've got.
Wow. No, that's amazing. And I'm just thinking right now, it's like we need to do a complete like museum, like showcase where people can come through and walk through some of this process. But just so much shared in there, and thank you for doing that too for us, because it's just I like I mentioned before, it just gives us this whole different dimension of the book. But also just thinking in that you're both parents, and you both mentioned how your own parents, your mom, for example, Jerome, like influenced what work that you're doing, or gave you supports as young people to explore. So how has being parents influenced your work, say in this case with this book?
I can speak to that. Well, one, the baby Elbert, and I think I've shared this, was very much inspired by my son was 2 at the time when I was doing the illustrations. So he was literally the kneeling, crawling model for Elbert floating. And I think I captured some of his essence in the innocence of Elbert's baby face. And I'll say this, more broadly as a storyteller, I'm writing stories that I would like to read to my children, and stories that I'd like them to be influenced by. And the same with this, even contributing as the visual storyteller on this one. They're always top of mind. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that makes me curious, Jerome, because my kids are have outgrown for now picture books. They're teenagers. They don't yet realize that, they can read picture books as adults. But do you get to read this book to your kids? Do they like it? Do they not like it? Do you try not to read your work to your kids?
Yeah, they were the first audience. I'm sure they had the black and white story. I'm like positive. Here's how involved they are. They were tracking. I had a little grid on the wall that said every illustration I need to do, and I would do the checks on there. And my daughter was like running me on it. So she knew exactly what sketches were being done. And in the end, if something looked different than the way that was on the original sketch, she's like, "Oh, you took the kids off the bikes." And I was like, "Yeah, that's not going in the story." So they're very much involved in the story. They like that, the background work.
That's awesome. So I actually had also had the good fortune that my younger son was I think in maybe sixth or seventh grade, and so he was still sweetly coming out to my office at the end of the school day to actually sit on my lap. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I just felt so incredibly blessed because my older son, as I said, never really even liked to be held, and kind of became an adult in 6th grade, and my younger son was still sitting on my lap, and he so he would come out and check every day about the progress of Elbert, and turns out he's a really good reader. And I was really, really stuck on the end for a really long time. And there was this big moment where he came out, and I had this elaborate thing going on in the air with all of these different kids, and I was creating all these friendships for Elbert. And he read it, and I said, I don't know why it's not working. And he said, think about it, Mom. This is about Elbert and his mom. And I thought, God, like that is true editing. I thought, right, I'm thinking about it. You're right. It's about Elbert and his mom. And I was able to, take away all of these kids with names and, all this stuff and have it end with the mom. And then beautifully, I realized I could put a note to the illustrator. We try not to give too many notes to the illustrators, but say, my intention is that some kids from the ground will come and visit Elbert in some way. And so then Jerome created the whole storyline of two kids in the classroom who reappear in various scenes as supporters, as allies, basically, and who come up, work hard to meet Elbert where he is. Mm-hmm. That's what's at stake here. I didn't want Elbert to have to modify himself in ways that were uncomfortable to him. And so his friends are the ones who figure out how to reach him where he is.
Yeah. And you mentioned too, you mentioned supports. You have these two constants in the book as well. So what does support look like? I know you mentioned too, like, I think even in the book, it mentions on yours, Monica, that, your parents were the support and so on. And so just wondering too, like, what does that support look like for you? What is it, and then we can come to Jerome for that as well.
Whew. Well, I think support is really hard. And we screw up all the time. So for me, when I read the line, if Elbert was meant to float, I will let him, I very often get teary. And I hear that from a lot of readers that they get teary at that line. I think support really, deep support means paying attention, trying to see someone. And it's hard to see people, and it's hard for us to be seen. I think, we hide ourselves behind layers for good reason. And we protect ourselves to not let everyone in. And so I know what it feels like to be observed, and so, I remember key moments in my childhood, especially with my father, just feeling like, oh my God, he gets me. He saw me. So I think Elbert's mother, of course, Elbert's floating, that's clear, but she says, oh, this is who he is. Let me see what happens if I create room for him to do this, because maybe he's not going to keep floating. She can't know what's going to happen. So she's just creating the room for it. And as it turns out, he keeps floating higher and higher. So, I think support's about paying attention, observing, and creating room for someone.
Oh, for real. Yeah. And Jerome?
Yeah, well, I think that was very beautiful what you said, Monica. And as I said, I'm still learning, but I think that rings true to me. With my children, I feel, and I discussed this with my wife, we think it's very important to grant them the right to exist as they are. And we know that our role is to help them be able to survive and develop as people. And we share our values and we do all of that, but we don't want to squash their independence or their individualism. So as best as we can, we try to support it. And we may be succeeding. We might find out 10 years later we didn't do so awesome. I don't know. We'll see.
You're trying. That's all that matters. No, for sure. But it's so interesting to always just listen to hear what you parents share, and having, being in the classroom, having been in the classroom a few years, got to hear a lot of, just have a lot of conversations with parents and just see those things that came up, and different things that others worried about other things, others were excited about one thing, and so it was really interesting to be a part of that and learn with them as well. But another thing that comes up here, kind of not related, but to the book, of course, Marietta there says, really digging the color palette and style and the story, which feels timeless. How do things like this make you feel, and how? Yeah, just guess I'll start with Monica on this one.
Yeah, thank you. I love that the story feels timeless. And yeah, picking Jerome to illustrate, I was really hoping that it would have this feel of, I suppose, of books that I loved as a kid, which of course feel timeless to me because I read them as a kid and they're still around. But I felt like the story itself has this very kind of careful organization of kind of classic storytelling. There's 3 things, 3 times that it escalates. There's 3 people giving bad advice, then 3 more people giving bad advice, then 3 more people giving bad advice. So it's very, and Elbert wishes once and then he wishes twice and then he finally gets his wish. So I'm using that really kind of old-fashioned rule of 3s, that fairy tale kind of feel. So even though I've talked so much about letting kids be who they are and all of that, I'm a very kind of old-fashioned, rule-bound, I like to work with those things as well. So I think the story itself has an old-fashioned feel, and so I was really hoping that Jerome would bring this his color palette and his the beautiful way that he creates a lot of space, a lot of shapes, works with shapes on the page that would kind of reinforce that feel.
Yeah, and Jerome, for you.
Sure, that's great to hear. I think yeah, so that was very intentional. I like the stories to have a feeling of timelessness, and that's, as an artist, it's an interest of mine. I try to study the actual aesthetics of what creates that. I love finding some artwork that I find out is from the 1800s, and I'm like, wow, that could be in a Marvel comic today. Which you find with, for instance, some of the prints from Japan in the 1800s. So for this, it was making it look like print work, even though it's digital, and using a limited color palette, which can help it have that timeless sense. It's a bit more than a limited color palette, but I certainly didn't use like more than 10 colors or all of the colors that you can find on a computer. And so that's kind of how I work towards creating that feel.
Oh, thank you. No, and thank you, Marietta, as well. Marietta actually just had her debut author illustrated book that came out called Jack the Library Cat. It just came out on I think it's in May. Came out in May 11th, if I remember correctly. But yeah, so, and just has been, is a good friend at this point and has been a supporter of Storytime. But I just, when she asks that question and speaks to this, I feel like she knows what she's talking about. It's in your realm. So yeah, I just thought I should bring that one up. Thank you, Marietta. And also, there's so many things that come up in this book, but because of time, of course, we're going to be ending. But just one of the things I thought that you brought out too, this, I feel like you kind of touch on this, especially with our schools, this idea of one size fits all in terms of how we manage, and all those things that you were talking about coming from the other side on the education piece, and seeing how every time a kid seemed to be different or was different, it was do this, do that, and always it was looking at things to change them, and not so much ways to accommodate them and make their school experience different. I don't know if anyone of you wants to speak on that, or if you have a little bit of experience on that, just Monica, I see you. Do you want to jump on that?
Well, yeah, I think that this book is really important right now because kids are being told that they have to, that they can't use the bathroom that, belongs to the identity that they have, or that, they have to sit in certain ways, even though they may be a kid who really needs to move in order to learn. I thank you for being a teacher, Peter. I mean, Mr. Limata, a teacher. No, you're in your teacher role right now. So, it's such a challenge. I mean, you've got a classroom full of kids, and you have to figure out how to accommodate all of them and their different learning styles. But it's hugely important. So and that is a big ongoing theme of mine, is also in my first book, Leo plus Leah. This idea that children should be, it goes back to being seen, that they're going to thrive in school if their differences are accommodated in some way, which is not to say that I advocate for pandemonium in the classroom. But Elbert figures out how to participate. He turns in his homework via paper airplanes. He plays tag with his shadow, with other kids' shadows. So he because he's supported, he thrives and figures out how to participate in school.
Yeah. And Jerome, I don't know if you wanted to share on that specific subject as well, but if not, also just thinking like one of the ones to end with too, just how do you balance life? How do you balance being a parent, being an amazing author, illustrator, creator, but also, and your day job too. So how is that? But if you wanted to talk about the school's issues as well, please feel free to jump in.
Well, I'll jump in on this last question. I think it's a challenge, and it really is something that I work to do to keep the balance, because I think you can easily overdo it and burn yourself out. So what I do is I'm very intentional about the time that I use for my creative work as a author illustrator. Like I do evenings and weekends on that, because as you mentioned, I have a day job. I still do art direction during the day. And with the kids, my wife is amazing. She also has a full-time job, an executive full-time job. So we're just keep the communication really in, and make sure that if either of us need help, we're very open about that, and we do the trade-off, and we make it go right somehow.
I like that open communication. Thank you. How about you, Monica, to wind down for us?
Yeah, well, having kids is amazing. It does, for me, it meant that I became extremely efficient with my time. Yeah, I guess that's it. I've learned to kind of really be efficient with each moment. I keep a notebook now where I record how many hours I'm spending on my creative work, because I found it was really easy to let other things that seemed really important take over. So I'm a freelance editor, and and I'm a teacher. So I'm very, very busy. I'm juggling lots and lots of things. But the most important thing, aside from parenting, is creating. And so I really wanted to make sure that I was creating adequate space for that. And I would also say it's really important that I figure out how to take little breaks. Because it's really tempting not to. And a break for me can really be 5 minutes sitting under a tree watching the leaves fall. But I really have to remember to do that. So I
Yeah.
would encourage everyone to make sure that they give themselves those 5 minutes throughout the day in order to be more kind of efficient and also connected to your deeper self. Because that is so much what creativity is about also.
Yeah. No, you just reminded me as you said those words. There are a few books, but one that comes to mind right now is I Wish You More by Amy Krauss Rosenthal and Tom Lichtenheld. And a line in there says, I wish you more pause than fast forward. And there's just this little girl lying down, observing ants kind of just like moving by. And just like, and I think every time I read that line, whether here or just on my own, for different things, but it just reminds me of that. Like I hope that everybody can have that time. I know sometimes it's a luxury, but I hope that we can find that time to just pause and slow down and just kind of get to introspect, just get to reflect on things. But I just want to thank you both really for being here today. There's so many questions that I didn't even get to on my paper, but thank you so much for just sharing, your authentic stories and your processes and everything, and sharing your voices, and I think this book speaks to so many things. I hope to see it in many more classrooms, and of course, there's many spaces where and for those watching, I hope that you can continue to ask for this book at your local libraries, support your small independent bookstores out there, wherever you are. Mine here close to me is Marcus Books. So if you're in Oakland, anywhere near in the Bay Area, please check out Marcus Books and support them, get this book through them. And of course, find books where you find books. But remember too that those libraries are our resources. They're there for us. And one thing I learned too that I want to share is a librarian friend posted, and they were saying, even if you might not be using your library card as much, please get it, because funding is tied into those library cards. So if you can go get it, renew it, so you have it. Yes, we can use it, but also then you're helping support your local libraries. Even though you might not be the one using the resource, somebody else depends on it and definitely is using that resource. So thank you so much for joining in. These have been our amazing guests today, Monica Wesolowska and of course Jerome Pumphrey. Thank you both for being here with us today. Please, I'll meet you in the studio backstage after this, but thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
All right, I'll see you in a bit. Everybody joining in, thank you so much for being here with us on Storytime. This has been Storytime for this week. This has been Storytime for this wonderful Friday morning. And those two were our guests today, Monica Wesolowska and of course Jerome Pumphrey. And they brought us Elbert in the Air. Now you know, go find it at your local library, go find it where you find books and get to enjoy it. Of course, turn on Storytime, why not, and read along with Monica on that one. So thank you so much for being here with us. Absolutely appreciate you all. Marietta, thank you for joining in. And of course, Henry, good to see you here. Enjoy your time in New York with Nana. Thank you so much for joining us on Storytime. Megan, and of course, Ari, thank you for joining us out in Illinois. Nathan and Sarah, and of course, Amanda West, thank you so much for being here with us on Storytime. I hope that you enjoyed it. And of course, if you're joining us later on for the recordings, please remember to leave us a message. Let us know you were here so we can say hi to you and yours. And of course, it's always good to know that you were here with us. Remember, you can find Storytime at storytimewithmisslimata.com, at Storytime with Miss Limata on Facebook and YouTube. And why not follow us on Instagram as well, so you can see everything that is coming up and time. Thank you so much for being here with us. Absolutely appreciate you. And of course, we're back next week, Monday, and then we're off Tuesday, but we're back next week with more stories, more amazing stories, another amazing lineup, and look out for who's coming to Storytime. This has been Storytime. Much love from me. Hugs, hugs, hugs to each and every one of you. And please remember, we talked about supports in the book today. Remember to check in on your loved ones, even if it's a text message, even if it's a short call, even if it's just checking in on your neighbor saying, hey, I see you, and just making sure you're okay. Thank you so much. You never know, that goes a long way indeed. Thank you so much for being here with us on Storytime. Elbert in the air, Monica Wesolowska, Jerome Pumphrey, and a big thank you, of course, to Dial Books and Imprint of Penguin Random House for allowing us to share this beautiful book right here on Storytime. As you saw, lots of lessons for it. Thank you for being here. Much love, and I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.